Welcome back. Today's story filled with drama and unexpected turns. Hit like, subscribe, and let's jump in.
The sound of a lawn mower and edger running simultaneously interrupted my Saturday morning slumber. A grunt from the other side of the bed confirmed that I wasn't the only one angry. Isabel sat up, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. She stretched and yawned simultaneously. "Sorry, Henry, I totally forgot the boys wanted to get an early start on the yard work so that everything would be ready for this afternoon." As she proceeded to the restroom, she tossed her filthy blonde hair to work out the knots and rats from sleeping on it. Her bum squirmed provocatively through the thin cotton nightgown. After 22 years, she still looked great. Today was my birthday. It was traditional to have a barbecue and invite the whole world. It wasn't too bad, just family, friends, and neighbors for a birthday celebration. It was a touch excessive. To accommodate everyone, we had to borrow a couple grills and smokers. Even though it was my day, I always felt compelled to do the most of the cooking. I wasn't very good at it, but it came out as planned. The finest part was that the chef always had a cool beer in his left hand. I needed to keep my right hand free to manipulate the meat. "Would you like your birthday present now, or do you want to wait until tonight? The shower is warm and ready." Isabel smiled as she gazed around the bathroom doorway. She had removed her nightgown and was pretending to be coy. "I'll see you tonight, little lady. Right now, I'm going to go down and help the boys. I'll shower later." Jacob was 19 and would be departing for the University of Oregon in 4 months. Nathan was a year younger and had already secured a scholarship to the University of Washington. They were excellent boys, and I gave Isabel full credit for raising them properly. The only things I personally offered them were a pleasant home and a strong work ethic. I've always regretted not being a more engaged parent. We spent a few hours working on the yard and patio area before firing up the grills. I intended to start the ribs on the smokers first. Hamburgers, hot dogs, and steaks could be cooked as required, but the ribs needed to be treated. Jacob ignited the smokers, while Nathan applied the dry spice on the meat. Hell, with the way things were going, I could probably just sit back and let them handle everything this year. Isabel came soon as we concluded our preparations. Her 2 sisters were coming over to assist her with all of the extras. There would be more than 50 individuals to feed today. It's interesting how friends gather when there's free food. I was 42 years old but felt like 20. Next month, Isabel and I would celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary. It was a nice marriage. The sex wasn't as heated as it had been in previous years, but it was still enjoyable. It appeared to slow down around a year ago, just after Isabel began working. Fear of an empty nest drove her out of the home. I was glad if she was pleased. We didn't need the money, but she needed social connections. The guys and I took a shower. My mother had dropped off a new clothing for me earlier in the week just for this occasion. It wasn't my style, but I had to wear it. I resembled a Hawaiian pimp. Isabel rightly required that I wear an apron. Of course, I had a great one that said, "Don't kiss the cook." It wasn't long before our visitors began trickling in. Some people brought food, some gifts, and some drink beverages. The weather was ideal, and the day promised to be wonderful. Isabel looked fantastic and, as always, was the ideal hostess. She will be 42 next year, yet she can easily pass for 30. She maintained her shape and appearance. I was looking forward to a few adventurous weekends and holidays after the boys had gone. I observed as she flitted between the tables, ensuring that everything was in order. What more could a guy desire than a perfect wife and mother? Finally, the anxious swarm began to feast. Plates of food emerge and vanish all over the yard. The majority of the attendees brought their own lawn chairs, which made things simpler. The beer was in one wash tub, while the sodas were in another. I knew the cake was secure in the kitchen, awaiting its moment of glory. I'm not sure where he came from, and I surely didn't recognize him. He was tall and wearing a dark blue jacket. He came to a halt on the outside of the party area, bent over, and spoke with one of the neighbors. She pointed at Isabel. He thanked her and continued walking towards us. Isabel observed his approach and seemed to be uneasy. I said nothing as he passed by me. "Isabel Connor," my wife nodded and agreed. He gave her an envelope that he had pulled from underneath his jacket. "Isabel Connor, you were served." That was it. He turned and went away, just as softly as he had entered. Of course, at this point, everyone at the party was watching. Isabel stood still. Her face showed no emotion. She gave me a quick look before gently turning to return to the house. I just observed and didn't say anything. The visitors' regular banter had subsided into quiet mumblings and murmurs. In a frantic attempt to break the trance, I yelled, "Does anybody want more ribs? Come and get them." Jacob and Nathan walked over to my side. "What the hell is going on, Dad?" Nathan tried to be subtle. All I could do was shrug my shoulders. Jacob began to enter the home, and I touched his arm. He paused as I nodded my head no. "Why don't you guys check to see if we need any more beer or drinks?" I relaxed a bit as the talk around the yard returned to normal. After 10 minutes, I decided to face my wife. I did not get the opportunity. Nathan pointed to the front of the house, saying, "Dad, Mom is leaving with the Camaro." My black Camaro coupe was going quicker down the street than it should have. The backyard became silent again as everyone watched her go away. Isabel usually drives the minivan, but it was parked. The Camaro was useful. There were a lot of unanswered questions, but I assumed they'd have to wait till my wife arrived home. Following that, things went bad. Isabel's sister Anna brought out the cake, and I made a half-hearted effort to seem cheerful. Without Isabel, there seemed to be a fog over everything. The friends and neighbors departed first. The family remained a bit longer, but there was soon nothing left to store or wash. Surprisingly, Isabel's quick departure had not come up in discussion. Everyone made a concerted effort to avoid discussing it. I was alone with my 2 boys and the home was silent. They both looked to me for any kind of indication or explanation. I had nothing to contribute. I sat on the couch alone as they went to bed. I was still there in the morning. Jacob and Nathan awoke early and began the day by returning the barbecues and other items to their neighbors. The scent of fresh coffee drew me from the sofa. Isabel hadn't returned. Whatever was in the package must have been very significant. I tried calling her mobile phone multiple times, but it was switched off. Of course, I stayed up all the night trying to figure out what was going on. The lads finished returning everything and departed. They had little issue figuring out that I liked to be alone. A lengthy hot shower helped, but not much. There wasn't much I could do on a Sunday. Tomorrow, we'll see if the cops can assist in any way. I didn't know any officers or detectives, but I did have a few pals at the courts. Hopefully, they will be able to assist. We had a credit card and a debit card. The debit card was used for day-to-day transactions, while the credit card was utilized for bigger expenditures. We paid them off monthly. If Isabel were in difficulty, she'd have to use them. The credit card purchases took a few days to appear on the bank account, although debit charges were normally reported within a few hours. I initially investigated the credit card activity and discovered nothing. The debit card was a different story. Isabel stopped near the Nevada-Colorado state boundary to get petrol around 2 hours after leaving the residence. She obtained some in Wyoming 2 hours later, and her last transaction was a $350 withdrawal from an ATM in Denver. I was on my 3rd cup of coffee when I realized she wasn't coming back. She was not wasting time. She ran away. I loved my wife and did not want to harm her, but I also did not want to support her in whatever she was doing. Even though it was a Sunday, I was able to cancel both cards in 10 minutes. About an hour later, I phoned the police and reported my Camaro stolen. I didn't tell them my wife had taken it. Instead, I stated that there was a petrol card in the vehicle, which had been used in 3 states as we drove west. I felt awful about lying to the cops, but I figured it was the only way I could gain any attention. It was feeble, but they were more interested in getting rid of me than in asking me about the situation. I took a rapid inventory of the home, and the only items that seemed to be gone were a pocketbook and a tiny overnight bag. I had no clue what she had put in it. I spent many hours debating what to do with her mobile phone. I was hoping that by canceling the cards, she would be forced to contact home and explain the situation. I never got around to having lunch. Before I knew it, it was supper time, and my boys arrived with a couple of pizzas. There was a lot of food left over from the day before, but I have to confess that the heated slices were tasty. We eventually got around to discussing what had transpired. I informed them on what I knew, and they offered assistance. I slept in my own bed that night. Isabel never called. Jacob and Nathan spent the summer working for a local tree trimming business. It was hard labor, but they looked up to the task and relished the macho image that came with it. I waved to them from the porch as the SUV drove down the street. After completing my coffee, I returned to the vacant home, still trying to figure out what had gone wrong. I phoned into work and took a week off. I was becoming tired of the work, although it paid well. I transported gravel for a nearby rock quarry. It was hot and nasty, but there weren't many choices to choose. I merely picked up the loads, dropped them off, and got my money. We attended many workplace gatherings shortly after Isabel began working at Glenmore Insurance. They had parties and picnics, and I met some of the people she worked with. I simply remembered that we hadn't been attending any events in the previous 6 months or so. In fact, she never mentioned them. They were significant to her when she first joined the firm, but they are no longer. I'm not very good at remembering individuals I meet, but I do recall Jack and Isabel Gilson. Jack worked as a carpenter, and Isabel shared an office. A call to Glenmore Insurance seemed to be in order. Isabel, this is Henry Connor. Do you have a minute to talk? Hi Henry, I'm pretty busy right now. I hope it isn't anything important. Isabel didn't show up for work today, did she? No, we didn't really expect her to. Oh, really? Why is that? There was a lengthy delay on the other end of the telephone. Isabel was obviously uncomfortable talking to me. Henry, I don't think I want to discuss any of this with you. I think you should talk to your wife. I would be glad to, except I have no idea where she is. There was another prolonged silence. Henry, I'm sorry, but I have a lot of work to do. I have to go. Before I could say anything further, she hung up. I suddenly had the impression that there was something going on at Glenmore Insurance that Isabel did not want me to know about. That explains why we were no longer attending workplace events. She was concerned that someone might accidentally say or do anything that would reveal her identity or lead me to assume she was up to no good. I got a cool drink and walked out onto the porch to contemplate. There were a few things I saw during the last several months, but I didn't think much about them. Isabel began working extra a couple evenings each week. It wasn't enough to raise a red flag, but it had become the norm. She stopped talking about work at home, and we avoided interacting with anybody from the business. On the other hand, she had not altered her look or attire. She had not purchased any new apparel or expensive undergarments. There were no unusual phone calls or emails that I remember. I trusted my wife, so I had no need to question anything she was doing. She didn't become a witch at home, and she didn't cut me off romantically. It was time to make some more phone calls. Patrick Nolan, an old high school acquaintance, worked at the courts. I didn't know what he did, but I knew he worked with computers. I described the situation to him and arranged to meet him by the glass door when he got off work. Before leaving the home, I phoned Griffin Construction and learned that Jack Gilson was working on an apartment complex nearby. I intended to visit him shortly after lunch. I normally complete the El Camino burrito, but today I barely got halfway through it. I was anxious to speak with Jack. When I arrived, the staff was still on their lunch break. Jack grinned and walked up to the automobile. He appeared a lot kinder than Isabel had been. Henry, good to see you. I assume you want to talk about Isabel. Jack, I talked to Isabel this morning, and she refused to tell me what was going on. You have to let me know, man-to-man. I liked Jack because he was blue-collar like me, but I knew if he attempted to pull me about, I'd be furious. Henry, I usually tune Isabel out when she starts in with the work gossip, but this much I do know: Isabel has been messing around with a married guy at the office for nearly 6 months now. They tried to keep it quiet, but it became common knowledge in no time. Isabel stopped talking to Isabel when she found out, and so did a lot of the other girls. We missed you at the company affairs, but we figured Isabel was keeping you away on purpose. That's about it. Do you know who the guy is? No, I don't pay attention like I should, but I can find out for you. Don't worry about it, Jack. I'll sort it out. That pretty much sums it up for me. There was no misunderstanding, it was just a foolish guy who had no clue what was happening in his own home. 10 minutes later, I cancelled her mobile phone service. She was now unable to phone home. I was on my way back home when I received a mobile phone call. Police in Denver discovered the Camaro parked in the bus station depot parking lot. It had been hauled to an impound yard, and I could pick it up at any moment after paying a $350 charge. I dropped by the police station, and they handed me a physical copy of the report. The only conclusion I could reach was that Isabel had abandoned the automobile and transferred to the bus. I couldn't find out where she traveled, but I believed it was westward. I had no idea she knew anybody in that region. I went to the bank and canceled all joint accounts, starting new ones in my name exclusively. I shifted the beneficiaries of my insurance plans to the boys. I arrived at the glass door early and drank too much alcohol before Donald came. Henry, there was a divorce hearing today, and Isabel was called to testify. Of course, she didn't show up. Elaine Thompson was divorcing her husband, James Carter, using adultery as the grounds. Mrs. Ridgway wanted Isabel to testify that she was the woman her husband committed the adultery with, so the divorce wouldn't go through without Isabel's testimony. No, it all went just as planned. It seems that Mrs. Ridgway had photos, videos, and taped phone calls that all supported her claim. She didn't really need Isabel's confession. I think that she had her called just to embarrass her. Sounds like it worked. What is Isabel's status now? The best I can tell, nobody cares anymore. There's nothing new that she can contribute, and it doesn't matter anyway. James Carter more or less admitted to everything after his wife's lawyer presented all the evidence. The judge granted the divorce on the spot. It becomes final in 6 months. He's getting reamed on child support and alimony. He has 3 kids, all under 10 years old. He will be paying for that mistake for a long time. Donald and I spoke for a bit until he begged off to go home to his family. I thanked him and asked the bartender for a coffee. When I was about to retrieve one of the red pickled eggs from the jar on the bar, I recalled the party leftovers. I had a bit too much to drink, but I made it home safely. It was a dumb thing to do given the circumstances. I wrapped 6 ribs in tin foil and placed them in the oven while I had a shower. When I returned to the kitchen, all that remained was a mound of bones. Jacob and Nathan arrived home and went right for the meat. They tugged my leg slightly before pulling out a second batch from the burner. Jacob was quite enthusiastic about the Camaro scenario. After a 20-minute conversation, I decided to let both sons ride the bus to Denver and drive the vehicle home. I handed them $750 for costs. Nathan created a letter on the computer granting them permission to pick up the vehicle and drive it home. He seemed to know what he was doing, so I closed my lips and signed it. The following morning, we all ate breakfast at IHOP before I sent them off at the bus terminal. I laughed a bit as they boarded. They had no clue what 2 days on a Greyhound would be like. It was an excellent life lesson. I contacted the Denver Police Department to ensure that they were prepared. They claimed there would be no issues. I had one more item to take care of. It did not take long to figure out where James Carter's office was. Isabel rushed for her phone the moment she spotted me. It was too late. I didn't bother introducing myself, I simply began striking him on the head and shoulders. He made a few feeble efforts to protect himself but ended up behind his desk on the floor. I kicked him in the gonads a few times before the security guys grabbed me. He was a bleeding mess, and I felt much better. Things progressed quickly after that. Before I knew it, I was in the police station, before a judge, and on my way to the county prison. There was no trial, just the judge and myself. I had 60 days and didn't give a damn. I phoned the lads as soon as I could to catch them up. I think I heard Nathan chuckling on the phone. The home would be okay to sit unoccupied for a few days. Things weren't exactly how they looked on TV. It wasn't a stroll in the park, but I didn't feel like my life was in danger or that I was about to be attacked at any time. Mostly, there was a lot of unpleasant farts who couldn't get along with anybody and a bunch of foolish kids. There was little interaction between the children and the farts. A private room was out of the picture. I wound myself sharing a cell with a 300-pound gorilla called Diego, who assaulted his wife after discovering her in bed with his brother. I didn't know what had happened to the brother. Diego and I got along well. Naturally, I opted for the top bunk. The dining hall meal was higher in carbohydrates than I like, and Diego was more than eager to assist me with whatever I didn't want. Aside from the fact that he farted more than any other guy in the state, he made an excellent roommate. 3 days later, Jacob and Nathan visited me. The automobile recovery journey went well, but they weren't looking forward to any bus travels in the near future. They had no clue about Max or their mother. They handed me 2 boxes of cigarettes, despite the fact that I do not smoke. Jacob said that he believed they would be useful for trade. He watched too many movies. When I delivered them to Diego, he was pleased. He said that smoking was necessary to keep his weight under control. I had no issue leaving the boys alone in the home, and it seems that no one else did either. Jacob departed for school a week before I came out of prison. He took the minivan and left the SUV to Nathan. Nathan and I celebrated my return by going to Red Lobster. He was delighted to begin his last year of high school. Unfortunately, he would have to go through it without me. I had other plans. Isabel couldn't believe what she saw as I strolled by her desk the following morning. I winked at her before entering Max's office again. 3 hours later, I was back on the bus heading to the county prison. This time around, it's 6 months. Nathan felt it was humorous and quickly contacted his brother in College Station. Diego welcomed me back with open arms. Phew. I did a better job with Max this time. I suppose I broke something. Of course, I never received any feedback, so I don't know for sure. I was sacked from my job. It was a big surprise. There was enough money saved to handle the housing payments and living costs. Jacob handled everything without any problems. In addition to Jacob, the rest of my family visited me on a regular basis. Jacob ensured that I always had smokes for Diego. Isabel's sisters paid her a visit and expressed their sympathies. Neither they nor anybody else in the family had heard from Isabel. We held a family Thanksgiving and Christmas feast in the prison. I still had a month left when I lost Diego. I didn't really lose him, he was only freed before I was. His wife and brother had gone for Florida, and he had no clue what he would do. Nathan felt it was nice to have Diego as a house guest until he got established. He offered to find him a position with the tree trimming firm, but Diego wanted to go south, where it was warmer. I was thinking of Florida. The night before Diego departed, James Carter was discovered beaten to a pulp in a downtown alley. He informed the police that he had been assaulted by an ape. I thought it was humorous since I had a solid alibi. After being released, I determined that ID had enough flesh from Max. In reality, he was no longer working in the region, so I didn't feel like hunting for him. I attended a course to learn how to operate huge trucks. It wasn't much more difficult than the dump trucks I was accustomed to. I needed to kill a few months till Jacob began at the University of Oregon, so I spent it cleaning up the home. I wanted to sell it, but it was in both of our names, and I did not want to go through the process. No one has heard from Isabel since she departed. Jacob brought the Camaro with him to Nevada since it was a female magnet. Never did anything for me, but I wasn't as youthful and attractive as he was. I discovered a couple eager to purchase the home with a cloud over it. I didn't understand what it meant, but they got a terrific bargain on the price. Their lawyer convinced them that Isabel's signature was unnecessary, and I was not going to dispute with them. I simply wanted out of it completely. I used the down payment to purchase a truck with a sleeper. Before I knew it, I was on the road, free. I never filed for a divorce from Isabel because I didn't see the necessity. I was not interested in marrying again. You don't meet many intriguing women in prison, and Diego turned me off from the alternative. Isabel did not seem to be interested in divorcing me, since I received no surprise in the mail. I had no problem finding job. I wasn't desperate for cash, so I could be a bit careful about my loads. I never transported anything frozen, living, hazardous, or explosive. I also avoided any trips north of the Mason-Dixon line during the winter. It didn't take long for me to pick up the trade and begin to love my new life. Things got intriguing when I was transporting agricultural equipment in Montana. It was June, so the weather wasn't an issue. I had just dropped off the cargo and was heading south, approximately 5 miles from I-90, when I came upon the Belly Up Diner. It was a hole in the wall, yet the parking lot was packed with large trucks and automobiles. The appeal turned out to be all-day breakfast that was both large and delicious. The majority of the customers were locals, but it seemed that a few long-haul truckers had made an extra effort to stop there. I just instructed the waitress to bring the house special and coffee. 3 large-screen televisions were broadcasting 3 separate shows that no one was actually watching. The one nearest to me seemed to be airing largely political advertising, one of which attracted my attention. William Barrett was running for the United States House of Representatives. He was handsome and seemed to have a silver tongue. His new wife, Isabel, was behind him, dressed like Jackie Kennedy and smiling broadly. My Isabel. My re was interrupted when the largest dish of hash ID ever seen was placed before me. There you go, big boy. Do you need anything else? Tabasco, I said, spotting the spicy sauce concealed below the pepper shaker. My waitress, Anna, chuckled as she transferred it from its hidden location to my dish. Are you good now? Almost. Who is that woman standing beside that slick talker? She gave a little snort. That's Hemingway's new arm candy. He needed a wife so he could run for office. There's a rumor going around that he's not straight, if you know what I mean. I began throwing the Tabasco into the mound of hash. She looks a little old to be arm candy. I guess you can't be too choosy when you're in a hurry. She is pretty, however, and I think older women make better lovers. Don't you agree? She looked terrific. Her blonde hair was now chestnut and seemed to have been treated in a luxury salon. Her makeup was flawless, and the outfit fitted her like a glove. It wasn't quite a dress, more of a fitted suit. I looked away from the television and observed that my waitress had returned to work. The hash was excellent, and it was clear why the parking lot was busy. My coffee cup was filled twice before I cleared my meal. The pie looked delicious, but I didn't have any space left. Anna grabbed my empty plate and dropped the check in front of me. Is he going to win the election? Not if we can help it. He's got big money behind him from important people in Des Moines. None of the locals want anything to do with him, but we don't have the votes or the money to stop him. I snickered as I took out my money clip. You know something, don't you? Are you sure they got married? Yep. They actually did it on TV, like it was a reality show or something. No honeymoon, though. They said they were waiting until after he was in office. I was still happy when I dropped the 10 on the counter. Mister, you better tell me something before you walk out that door. I'm not looking for trouble, and I'm not sticking my nose where it doesn't belong. I would like a favor, however. What's that? Can I catch a couple of hours of sleep out front before I hit the interstate? No problem, but watch out for those cock 304s. They sneak up here every now and then. Dirty, nasty witches. I nodded in gratitude and smiled as I went out the door. Anna was looking from the window as I got into the rig. I was just about to fall asleep when the hammering on the door began. I ignored it briefly, but it persisted. Go away. They said it was okay for me to park for a couple hours. Whoever it was refused to leave, so I was forced to open the door. Anna said, I had to talk to you. Do you have a few minutes? It was dark and rainy. All I could see was a barely visible lady in a poncho. I didn't break any laws. Leave me alone, just give me 10 minutes. She seemed and sounded determined. Sorry, lady, I'm not interested. Go get one of the other guys. I'm not a hooker, damn it. I need to talk to you about Hemingway. I'll meet you inside in 10 minutes. That seemed to satisfy her. She closed the door with a half grin on her face. Perhaps it would have been better to just let her climb inside the rig, even if she was soaking. As I removed the raincoat, I checked my watch. I barely had 3 hours of sleep. The eatery nonetheless had a solid turnout. There was a storage compartment beside the entrance for all of the rainwear, which would be replaced in a few months with winter gear and boots. She was seated in a booth near the front window, holding 2 cups of coffee. Her hair was straight and shining black, with a little white stripe down one side. Her complexion indicated that she was an outdoor girl, since she was well-tanned and firm. Actually, she was far from being a girl. She was at least 35 years old, maybe closer to 42. The look was completed with high cheekbones and no makeup. I sat down, holding out my hand. Henry Connor. Laura Bennett. Do you want anything to eat? No thanks. I just had the hash special 3 hours ago. I don't think I'll be eating for a while. She replied with a courteous grin. Emily said that you might know something about Isabel Hemingway. I want to talk to you before you take off. What the hell is so important about Isabel Hemingway? My brother Samuel is running against him in the election. Oh, I see. This is a personal thing. Not really. Samuel represents the people in the area, the farmers, ranchers, and Native Americans. Hemingway is looking out for the Des Moines businessmen. We're not anti-business, but we don't feel that a lot of people will get a fair shake if Hemingway gets elected. Okay, but I still don't see what his wife has to do with any of this. We don't either. All we know is that something's not right. Our election committee tried to do a background check on her and ended up with nothing. His campaign people are not releasing any information about her. This might all be nothing, but we're getting desperate, and Emily said she thought you might know something. I suppose I shouldn't become a professional poker player if a waitress can read me that well. She leaned back in her chair. She was right. You do know something. Are you going to tell me, or am I going to have to beat it out of you? I finished my coffee and smiled. I thought her choice of words humorous. In reality, it was rather humorous. I leaned forward while waving my empty cup at Emily. I think I like the second option best. I have no clue what made me say it. It was not in my nature to be a wisius or use innuendos. I suppose it was because I loved her manner. She was confident and forthright. I got the impression that she always knew exactly what she wanted and how to obtain it. Emily completed the refills, and Laura Bennett stared at me. I'm sorry, that was rude and impolite of me to say that. I'll answer any questions you may have. Sally covered her lips and laughed a bit. It's okay, Mr. Connor. I'm not that damn sensitive, and I thought your answer was cute. I should not have posed the question the way I did. Oh good, that means the second option is still open. No, damn it. How do you know Isabel Hemingway? She's my wife. We've been married over 22 years and never divorced. I haven't seen her for a few years, but unless she got a divorce somewhere that I don't know about, we are still married. Sally appeared at a loss for words. She said nothing at all. She simply sat there, staring at me. What did she use as a maiden name when she got married? She paused for a while before saying, oh my gosh, her maiden name was Connors. The witch did not even bother to hide it. Whoopee. Of course, Emily came racing over, and everyone in the room turned to look at us. I was little embarrassed by the attention, but Sally seemed overjoyed. Sally rushed forward and kissed Emily directly on the lips. She went over to the entryway and pulled out her mobile phone. Emily blushed a bit and leaned over to me. What the hell did you tell her? I haven't seen her this excited in 5 years. The intelligent guy who had been concealed inside me for many years was beginning to emerge. I glanced up at Emily and said, I told her that you and I were going to marry. She instantly knew it was a prank, and I was rewarded with a hit to the arm. Are you going to tell me? No. I'll let Sally tell you. I'm going to go back to my rig and see if I can get back to work. It's been nice meeting you, Emily. The rain had ceased, but I had not made it to the rig. Sally took me by the arm before I got halfway to the door. You can't leave yet. You have to talk to Samuel. It won't take long, just a few minutes. I'd really like to drop this whole thing. I'm sorry now that I said anything to Emily. How long will it take for him to get here? He's going to meet us at my place. Do you want to ride with me or follow in your truck? I'll follow you. I felt better not having to rely on others for transportation. Sally was driving a Toyota wagon that was at least 10 years old, and maybe older. After a few kilometers of twisting roads, we arrived on a worn-out dirt road that led to a similarly worn-out double-wide trailer. Someone was there since the area was well lit. There was no grass, just gravel, and not much of it. I attempted to keep out of the muck, but it proved tough. There were no other automobiles nearby, so I figured Samuel was still on his way. A wet coat and boot storage compartment was located just inside the trailer entrance. It seemed like a fantastic idea, particularly because there were so many jackets and boots already there. It was an intriguing arrangement, mostly because it resembled a classroom rather than a living room. Instead of tables, there were desks. Instead of table lights, there were laptops, and 3 adolescent lads stared directly at me. Hello, guys. This is Henry. He's here to assist Uncle Samuel. Sally headed straight to the kitchen and began preparing coffee. Rather than greeting my audience, I gave them a slight nod. I felt a bit uneasy given the circumstances. I glanced around the room, but there was nothing to suggest the presence of Mr. Wilmot. With 2 kids, it was simple for me to notice that the boys were similar in age. I guessed 16, 17, and 19. There wasn't any television or music playing. All 3 of them seemed to be either using a computer or reading a book. The unusual thing was that they did not seem bookish or geeky, but rather regular, strong, and energetic children. Henry, these are my sons, the oldest is Logan, the next is Caleb, and the youngest is Aiden. They each smiled and nodded at me. I couldn't stop grinning, and my delight was clear. I know it's a little odd that we gave them names that all started with the letter T. No, that's not why I'm amused. It's just that I have 2 sons named Jacob and Nathan. I thought that was a hell of a coincidence. Caleb was the first of the boys to speak. Where are your sons? His mother gave him a severe look that he seemed to disregard. Jacob is at the University of Oregon, and Nathan is at the University of Washington. That one phrase illuminated the whole room. Logan awoke abruptly, like if the Energizer Bunny had zapped him. I'm leaving for College Station in August. How long has he been there? What is he studying? Sally eventually touched his shoulder. Slow down, boy. I'm sure Mr. Connor has time to answer all your questions. Logan had a full football scholarship and had already signed up for a position on the squad. Caleb had been admitted to the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis and would be departing in a year. Sally's husband had served in the National Guard and was murdered in the Gulf 5 years ago. She didn't provide any further information, and I didn't press for it. Aiden, the youngest of the boys, hadn't chosen what he wanted to do yet, but his mother still made sure he studied on a regular basis. I had no clue what was holding Samuel up, but I spent the next hour conversing with Sally's boys about everything. Sally just stood to the side and watched as I connected with them, just as I had with my own. Being around Sally's children reminded me how much I missed my guys. Samuel Honeycutt eventually came with 2 accomplices. After the introductions, Sally sent the lads back to work as the grown-ups gathered around the kitchen table. There seemed to be some uncertainty about my claim to be Isabel's husband, and it wasn't essential enough to me to argue about it. As I got up to go, I thanked them for the coffee and told the lads it was a pleasure to meet them. Sally would have none of it. "Damn it, Henry, sit down." The remainder of the faces at the table sat quietly. Sally took over the discourse, as if she were the candidate for office. "Henry, do you have a marriage license or something to prove that you were married to Isabel Hemingway?" It just took a few seconds to dig out a wedding photo from my wallet. She was older now, and her hair had changed, but you could still tell it was Isabel. I glanced across at one of Samuel's employees, who was holding a laptop computer. "Go to the Berks County, Virginia Office of Records. You should be able to log on to marriage licenses from 1970 to 2000. Just do a search for my name, Henry William Connor." Sally offered me a new cup of coffee and a little grin. She appeared relieved that I did not resign. Flunky number 1 tilted the laptop screen towards Samuel. "August 17, 1981. Is that right?" Samuel appeared a bit happy now. I nodded and sipped my fresh brew. "Good luck finding any kind of divorce record. As far as I know, or anybody else knows, I am still married. Feel free to examine any of this as much as you like. It makes no difference to me." As the discourse became more repetitive and monotonous, I stood up without being interrupted. "Do you mind if I catch a few Zs in your driveway before leaving?" "No, not at all." After Sally walked me to the door, I looked back to say goodbye to Samuel and his cronies, but they were preoccupied with whatever it is that politicians do. As I walked away, the boys each gave me a small wave or nod, and an hour later, I heard Samuel and his group leave, so I figured I was good for the night. When I heard the rapping on the door again, Sally jumped into the cab with a flannel nightgown on, indicating that she didn't want me to speak. We were far enough away from the house that the boys couldn't hear anything, but I think she just didn't want any conversation. She spent at least an hour with me in the sleeper, which was passionate and loving, but a little uncomfortable. Rig berthing arrangements are great for sleeping. The sun was up when the door started making noises again, and it was Aiden telling me to come into the house for breakfast. Fortunately, boys and men like the same kind of food, and Sally knew how to make it. I spent another hour chatting with the guys, and I felt fairly comfortable enough to ask Sally for permission to take a warm shower before leaving. An hour later, I was finally on the road, but not for long. The local sheriff pulled me over before I realized it seems that Mr. Honeycutt needs to talk to you some more. I had to follow the police vehicle back to the belly up, where Samuel was waiting for me. He was in the midst of breakfast and encouraged me to join him. Anna gave me coffee and used the chance to give me a huge wink. She must have been a closer friend with Sally than I realized. The party would pay for a motel room and meals, but that was the best they could do, so I decided to stay a few more days, especially after the night before. I tried to discourage Samuel's legal advisors by saying, "Time is money," but he just laughed and kept eating. It would have been very easy to agree to everything and then just skip out, but I decided that I might want to stay a few more days. I don't think I've ever seen a woman look better in jeans. She had 3 children and maintained a great figure. Her blue Oxford shirt was not tucked in, but was secured with a silver concho belt. Her skin shone, not from perspiration, but from a natural radiance. She was a really attractive lady. "What the hell are you doing, Henry?" she asked, and I gave her an innocent shrug as I folded laundry. "You were supposed to be gone. Remember? You said you'd leave this morning. Something changed. Your brother asked me to stay for a few more days. The only reason I came to see you last night was because I assumed you'd be gone today. I can't have you around here." She struggled for words. She seemed to be unprepared for anything more than a one-night affair and was unsure how to handle the situation. I was delighted by her displeasure and saw it as an opportunity for some fun. "After meeting with Samuel this morning, I'm really considering purchasing a home and settling here permanently." He made it sound rather nice. When I smelt it, I realized what was going on. I placed Sally down on the bench opposite the dryers. "Your brother demanded that I remain a few more days, just so they could build up something to go after Hemingway. I pledge to remain away from you and the boys until he finishes everything. I didn't intend to humiliate you or make you uncomfortable. That's not a problem, Henry. The lads like you. They wanted to know when you could visit again. They were a bit disappointed when I informed them that you were going. Caleb asked me to chat to you about staying a bit longer. I apologize. I was only trying to be nice. They reminded me of my own, and I found it simple to communicate with them. I did not want to cause any complications for you. Of course, I didn't make matters any easier when I got out to your vehicle last night. You certainly made things difficult. The implication earned me a poke in the arm and a grin. Why didn't you leave, damn it? I picked up a load of folded clothes, delivered it to her, and then gathered the rest before returning to my hotel room. She lingered at the door for a second before I held my finger to my lips, like she had the night before. Her seductive smile was followed by a broad grin as she closed the door behind her. It is much simpler to make love with a lady on a decent bed. However, my favorite part was the shower. Even when we ran out of hot water, we did not stop. Before she departed, she had me pledged to be at the home for dinner at 6. How could I refuse? I was ready. I had already taken 2 showers today. Supper at Sally's became a regular occurrence, and Anna became my most valuable ally. Anna and Sally have been friends since childhood. Anna took great joy in telling me about their childhood activities and the lads they jerked about. The chats about Sally's spouse were painful and far from fun, but they gave me a solid sense of who Sally was and why I wanted to know her more. I never intended to stay in Montana, but the longer I stayed here, the more I wanted to stay. By the conclusion of the first week, all of the lads had University of Oregon t-shirts and University of Washington sweatshirts. Sally saved one of the Arizona shirts for herself. It was a bit large for Aiden anyhow. I wasn't paying any attention to the political maneuvering. Samuel and his staff looked to be doing well without me. Somehow, the press learned about Isabel's mysterious history and began to exploit it. Hemingway's team attempted miserably to make nothing of it. The more they rejected or disregarded it, the worse the situation became. His statistics began to plummet dramatically. I was never engaged in any of it until I had a surprise visit early one morning at the hotel. The lady at my door was tall, blonde, and as straight as a pole. I was still wearing my boxers, but I allowed her in anyhow. Her gaze evaded me as I put on the 500-pound boots, but I observed every move she made. She was dressed professionally, wearing a dark suit, a white blouse, and low black heels. I wanted to take a leak and get a cup of coffee, but instead, I forced myself to sit at the small table that came standard in every American motel room. My name is Karen Myers. I'm an attorney from Levitt's Brothers in Des Moines. I assume that you are Henry William Connors. She knew my middle name. This wasn't good. Excuse me for a moment. I stood up and entered the restroom. Despite closing the door, I was certain that the noise I produced as my water struck the toilet bowl was heard. I was going to attempt to hold it for a bit, but I felt that this arrogant witch deserved some shame. Less than a minute later, I returned to the table. Was that necessary? No, but I figured from your tone that we were going to be here for a while. I waved my hand. Sorry, but I was just trying to be professional. What the hell do you want? Our company represents William Barrett. We recently learned that your marriage to Isabel Connors was never properly terminated, and we were hoping to rectify the problem. How? There are statutes available within the state to allow for rapid terminations of marriages in certain circumstances. We feel that we can take advantage of these statutes with your cooperation. You mean that you want me to divorce my wife? Yes. Why would I want to do that? I inquired, glancing at her. She appeared perplexed by my remark. I don't think she was expecting that reply. Miss Steins, will you please tell me in layman's terms why my wife and I are no longer living together? Don't sugarcoat it, and be completely honest. If you can do that, you'll consider continuing our conversation. She leaned back in her chair and unfastened the first button of her shirt, making me somewhat uncomfortable, but I maintained my cool. 3 years ago, your wife had an affair with a coworker. When you found out about it, she ran away because she could no longer face you or your sons. She has not been in contact with any of you since that time. Is that plain enough for you? I nodded. That's good. In fact, you hit the nail on the head. So, what's the problem? If you are following the news, you are aware that Isabel and Mr. Hemingway got themselves in a little bind. We can't undo what has been done, but we are hoping to alleviate it a little by getting her a quick divorce. Right. And tell me again, what do I get out of it? Freedom. I raised an eyebrow. Hell, I'm happy with the way things are now. You're going to have to show me how my life will be better, not the same. What do you want, Mr. Connors? Do you want money? How much? Give me something to work with here. What are the terms of the divorce that you're proposing? There are none. That's why it can be done so quickly. No money changes hands, no assets to divide, and no custody issues. You both walk away with what you have, and neither one of you owes anything to the other. It's clean and final. How long does this take? Less than 90 days. That means it will be final before the election. Yes, I believe it does. She accepted it but did not want to make it a big deal. Do I have to see my wife? No, in fact, we would prefer if you didn't. Do I have to stay here until it's over? My visitor sighed when I asked him this question. Yes. Okay, he'll agree to it on one condition. You have to pay for my room and board until it's completed. Karen Myers instantly smiled. I could tell it was better than she had hoped for. I could have asked her for a lot of money, but just now, receiving anything for free seemed better. I can prepare the papers and have them ready for your signature this afternoon. Would that be okay? Perfect. You'll have to check with my lawyer, but I don't think there will be a problem. Your lawyer? I don't have one, but I want to run it past Samuel first. She gave me a business card. Give me your card, and I promise to call you if there's anything he doesn't like. If you don't get a call, bring me the papers. I was relieved it was ended since I wanted some breakfast. I led her to the door barefoot, in jeans and no shirt, while she drove away. I spotted Sally across the parking lot, but before I could gesture her over, she raced away. After a brief shave, I dressed and went to the belly up. Anna gave me a harsh look while holding my coffee. Do I get a chance to explain? Not to me, Mr. Connors. You better have a good story for Sally, though. The meal was warm, but the company was frigid. I finished as fast as possible and contacted Samuel. He was out of town, but we spoke for 20 minutes. He was ecstatic with the scenario and advised me to proceed with it, but make sure I obtained copies of everything. He seemed to have complete control over the situation, regardless of how it unfolded. I requested him to phone Sally for me. He was still chuckling when he hung up. There was a major power wash facility along Interstate 90. I spent at least an hour steam cleaning and vacuuming the setup before finishing with an hour-long hand wax treatment. It would have been simpler to simply pay and have it done, but I needed the treatment. I stopped at Cracker Barrel for lunch before returning home. This time, I evaded Anna's anger since she was parked directly outside my room door. Sally stepped out of the Toyota as I approached, looking a bit guilty. Samuel had summoned her, as her look clearly indicated. She spent the next 2 hours apologizing to me. Guilt may be beneficial in some circumstances. She had already left when Miss Steins arrived with the paperwork for me to sign. For some reason, she also required me to take a check for $12,500. Hemingway's effort continued to fail, but my divorce petition made it through the judicial system. Logan was now at College Station, with a buddy to care after him. I was formally divorced right before the election. Samuel won and promised to repay me for my assistance. I didn't believe I accomplished anything, but I assured him I would call even if he gave me a sister. That earned me another hit in the arm from Sally. Following the election, Isabel's situation deteriorated. Someone chose to accuse her with bigamy. Anyway, before they could do anything, she just vanished. She was excellent at it. I never got to see or speak with her. I sold my vehicle and purchased a home in a little gravel mine outside Clayton. Sally and I married during Christmas, and my 5 adolescent sons were all there. Anna moved into the double-wide and vowed to take care of it properly. The ultrasonography revealed that we would be having a daughter. Anyone know some nice female names that begin with the initial T? That's all for today. Do you believe Henry made the correct decision? Please let us know in the comments. Do not forget to like and subscribe.